right, I'm going to go over it. So 1, 3, it had a lot of exponential stuff, but obviously it started, we didn't start with graphs, but it included graphs. Okay, and so will your test. So your test will have one full out graphing an exponential function, which has multiple parts. So I think in total it's like worth 15 points because it's going to ask you for the y-intercept, the horizontal asymptote, the domain, the range, and the graph itself, and those will all be worth points. I'm going to provide you the t-chart on the graph, but the x values are not there. You can choose what you want to plug in, but typically we plug in -1, 0, and 1. So then I'd get 2 to the -1, which is 1/2, 2 to the 0, which is 1, and 2 to the first, which is 2. So 1/2, 1, and 2. And then on the coordinate grid, -1 and 1/2, 0, 1, 1, 2. So with like this shape, there's not a huge curve there. You have to know that this is not a line. You have to know the overall shape of your exponential function. So on your test, I expect to see 1, the horizontal asymptote, which is at 0 unless there's a vertical shift. There's no vertical shift, so it's at 0. And I expect to see your curve take on the shape of an exponential function. So even if the coordinate points that you plot do not form that overall curve, you got to make sure it makes that shape. So our domain for all exponential functions is what? All real numbers are -infinity to +infinity. The range on this one starts at 0, goes to +infinity, has to have a parenthesis, so be careful because that's something you could lose points on. Your y-intercept you can either get from your graph, or if you use 0 as one of your t-chart points, then it's 0, 1. And your horizontal asymptote is at y equals 0 unless it has a vertical shift. Good? Okay, so now 2, I could base 2's graph off of 1 if I wanted to. Okay, so let's just talk about the transformations. In my exponent, I've got an x minus 1. What kind of translation does that cause? It would be to the right 1, and the -2 after causes? Down 2. So you're going to get a question on transformations, like describe the transformations. And then I would say, because you wouldn't have had the parent function of 2 to the x when you go to graph this, that I'll go through the same process. So I'll still use the t-chart. I'll plug in -1, 0, and 1. And I get 2, -1 minus 1 minus 2, which becomes 2 to the -2 minus 2, which becomes 1/4, minus 2, -1 and 3/4. Then I do 2 to the 0, minus 1 minus 2, which is 2 to the -1 minus 2, 1/2 minus 2, which is -1 and 1/2. And 2 to the 1 minus 1 minus 2, which is 2 to the 0, minus 2, 1 minus 2, which is -1. And we said this is a shift down 2, which means our horizontal asymptote shifts down to -2. These points would be -1, -3/4, 0, -1 and 1/2, and 1, -1. So you really don't get that curve there. You have to know to draw it in yourself. Domain is, again, all real numbers, -infinity to +infinity. Range would be -2 to +infinity. Y-intercept is middle point, 0, -1.5, and your horizontal asymptote shifted down to y equals -2. Yeah.
Does the function have to be mixed?
I mean, not for that answer, but for you to graph it, yes. So, like, if you wrote negative, you know what I'm saying? If you wrote -3/2, it's fine, but obviously you've got to know that that means -1.5 to graph it. Yeah.
For questions, is like describe the transformation. Could there be like a stretch in addition?
I mean, there could be. It would be something multiplied on the front. Yeah. So it would be like 3 times 2 to the x minus 1 minus 2. That's a vertical stretch. Okay. It could be -2 to the x minus 2. That negative means what? Reflection over x-axis. Good. If the negative was in the exponent. Reflection over the y. Good. I'm trying to think of what else. You could see something in the exponent. We already did that. And this, that -2 could be, sometimes I like to do this. to the x, right? It's still the same. This is still a vertical shift. So sometimes that vertical shift is at the front and sometimes it's at the end, but you got to be prepared for it to be both. Yes. All right. And the next slide was so this would be calculator portion. You'll start with these questions. I think there's 4 in total. Two with your interest problem. So find the accumulated value of an investment of $3,200 for 20 years at an interest rate of 5.6% if the money is compounded 3 monthly and 4 continuously. So for monthly, we do A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the NT. And for continuously, we do A equals PERT, P times E to the RT. Your 3,200 is your P. 20 is your T. 5.6% is your percent, which means rate is 0.056. You got to move that decimal twice. So then I would do 3,200 times 1 plus 0.056 over monthly would be 12, raised to the 12 times 20. And you get $9,782.02. And then per 3,200 times E to the R 0.056 times T20. And you get $9,807.53. Questions on either of those? So you got to know those formulas because they will not be given to you. All right, so let's go through concepts. This is the note that's posted. So if you wanted to grab it from Canvas, it's posted as a note document. You got to open it in Notability. Logistics on the test. There are 10 questions. The first 7 are multiple choice. 4 on the calculator part. And the rest are on the non-calculator part. And then there are 3 graphing questions. 1 exponential and 2 rational functions. These are this makes up 65 of your points. Because the exponential is 15, it's broken into parts, but it's 15. And the rational functions are 25 each. Because again, they're broken down into all the parts. My advice is make sure you make it all the way through. Obviously, don't get hung up on the beginning. Make sure you get it all the way through because to leave a 25 question blank would be terrible. A 25 point question blank. Yeah. But you can always move on, go back just like normal, okay? All right, so for your rational functions, okay? Remember your order is important. Order is first factor, second domain, 3 tests for holes. And then everything else after that is using your simplified version. So if you made that mistake on the quiz, you don't want to make it again, okay? Once you cancel out for your holes, those things are no longer part of your vertical asymptotes or your zeros, but they are part of the domain. So even if you cancel things out, it's still a restriction on your domain. So first thing we do is obviously factor. For our domain, we set the denominator not equal to 0. For our holes, we look to see if something can be canceled out. Canceled from the denominator. If it can, then I'm going to set that parentheses equal to 0, and that's the x coordinate of the hole. And then to find the y, all right, to get the y, we plug x into the simplified equation. For vertical asymptotes, after we simplify, we set the denominator equal to 0. And these are x equals a number equation. They have to be x equals. On your quiz, it was multiple choice, so the x was already there or the y was there. It's not that case on your test. Your test is an open-ended question. All right, horizontal asymptotes is the relationship between the exponent in the numerator and the denominator. What's true if n is less than m? Good. Y equals 0 is your horizontal asymptote. If n is equal to m, leading coefficient. So y equals leading coefficient of the numerator over leading coefficient of the denominator. And if n is greater than m, good. No horizontal asymptote. And the directions will say if there are none state, so we cannot leave those things blank because it looks like you skipped the question and then you get no credit. So you're going to write none if there are none. When is there a slant asymptote? Good. By how much? Good. N is 1 more than m. And how do we find the slant asymptote? Either synthetic or long, depending on what the denominator is, right? If it's x to the third over x to the second, I got to use long. But if it's x to the second over x to the first, I can use synthetic. And we ignore the remainder. And we set it equal to y. So y equals mx plus b is the format it should be in. For zeros, we set our numerator equal to 0. And for these, you can just list. So if my zeros are -2 and 7, I write -2, 7. You can write x equals -2, comma 7. Doesn't matter. But you don't need the x. Your y-intercept, we plug 0 in for x. And this time, we write it as a coordinate point. Yeah. And then you graph it by hand. So depending on the question, these blanks are like 2 or 3 points. If it's there, like if there's an answer that's there, it's 3 points. If it's something that's none, you get 2 points for it. But the graph itself is either 5 or 6 points because you're putting it all together. Okay, so again, these questions break down into 25 points. You want to make sure you're careful with these. And somewhere along the 2, you're getting a slant, and somewhere along the 2, you're getting vertical asymptotes, and somewhere along the 2, you're getting horizontal asymptotes, and somewhere along the 2, you're getting a hole. So you want to make sure you know how to do it all. Questions on that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, and then the exponential stuff. So we need a calculator for part of these things. The graphs are like the one we just did on the warm-up. So if I had a graph you would not have a calculator on, okay, we would look for our t-chart. We would find our vertical asymptote, horizontal asymptote, horizontal asymptote, y-intercept, domain, and range. So let's say I wanted to graph this, let f of x equals 3 to the x plus 2. Where's my horizontal asymptote at? 2, okay? My range is going to be from 2 to positive infinity. My domain, all real numbers. And then for the y-intercept, I could plug 0, but you'll also get your t-chart. There will be a word problem from this section, something about growth or decay, in which I'll give you the model, and all you got to do is plug in. So don't overthink it. Don't get scared because there's words. It's literally just I'm going to give you the value. You plug it in. There are both interest problems, the p times 1 plus r over n to the nt, where it's a certain number of times a year, and the PERT where it's continuous. Make sure you use the right formula because obviously if it's multiple choice, we switched it so that that's a distractor. You don't want to lose those points. Multiple choice are 5 points apiece. And then something like the one-to-one property. So if you've got the one-to-one property, this would be on the non-calculator portion. This is where we've got to change the base to be the same. So in this example, I get 2 to the x plus 3 equals 16 to the x minus 1. I'm going to leave the left side alone, and I'm going to change 16. 16 is 2 to the 4th. If you don't know it, then you break it down. 16, 2, and 8. 2 and 4, 2 and 2, and then count your 2s. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 to the 4th raised to the x minus 1. Now here's the most common mistake made on these is not distributing whatever this power is to both things. You got to make sure you distribute it to both. So I ignore the base, x plus 3 would equal, and distribute this, 4x minus 4. Subtract the x. Add the 4. And divide by 3. X equals 7/3. Questions so far? So if this was like if this is a whole number, it's easy to check or plug, like reverse it, but probably it's not going to be something you can just check your answers and plug in with, because you want to make sure you know how to do that process. Okay, questions as far as expectations go on your test. So your job this weekend is to start the or do as much of it as you can. The PDF review on Monday. I've got like a class cake to go over some of the extra graphing stuff, and I'll answer whatever kind of questions you got on your review. And then Tuesday, your job is to do well on this test because it's only 3 sections, so the content's not a lot. You just got to know what you're doing.
Is there any where it's like if it's easy to do it on the calculator?
The E? Well, it could be like the word problem could have E. Like if it's a growth or if it's a growth model, it could have E in it. Yeah, it'll be some sort of exponential.
So it's kind of just like 2e to like 4.
There could be, but you would use it for a calculator.
Okay.
Yeah. Eventually we'll get to solving with E's, but not yet. You're gonna use LNs for those.